The message arrived on Earth during the quiet hours of the night, when most of the planet was asleep. In the great city of New Geneva, inside the United Earth Council's communication chamber, a sudden alarm cut through the silence. Red lights flashed as technicians scrambled to trace the origin of the signal. At first they thought it was just static from the edge of explored space. But when the sound cleared, it became a voice, weak, trembling, and full of desperation. "This is Governor Reinl of Elira Prime. We are under attack. Unknown forces, too many. We cannot hold them back. Please, to any who hear this, help us. We beg you. They are coming. We cannot survive alone." The chamber froze. Every technician, officer, and observer stared at the holographic display where the broken message played again and again. The Illyrians were not strangers. They were one of humanity's oldest allies among the stars. Tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin. They had once offered humanity critical assistance during Earth's first voyage beyond its own solar system. Without their knowledge of faster-than-light navigation, Earth might have remained trapped, isolated among the stars for centuries. And now, these same people were crying out for help. Counselor Marin, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, rose from her seat as the message ended. "Get me everything we know about Elira Prime. Location, defenses, the size of their population, and track the source of the enemy signal if possible." "Yes, Counselor," technicians replied as they rushed to gather data. The chamber quickly filled with maps, charts, and flashing red warnings. Elira Prime was a large colony world, orbiting a golden sun nearly 70 light-years from Earth. The Illyrians had lived there for centuries, building cities of glass towers and cultivating vast forests of crystal-leaved trees. It was a world of beauty, a place where humanity's explorers had once been welcomed as brothers. Now it was a battlefield. Reports streamed in from deep space listening posts, massive energy spikes, entire fleets moving like shadows across the void. The enemy was identified only by one name whispered in fear across nearby systems: the Vathar. No one knew where they had come from. Some said they were a swarm, a hive of living ships. Others believed they were machines, mindless but unstoppable. Whatever they were, their advance was like a storm. Whole colonies had fallen silent as the Vathar passed through, leaving nothing but ruins in their wake. The council chamber buzzed with fear. 70 light-years. One official muttered. "Even with our fastest jump drives, that is weeks of travel." "They will be gone by then," another said grimly. "The Illyrians will be wiped out." But not all agreed. Admiral Saren, commander of Earth's First Fleet, stood at the edge of the chamber. His uniform was dark, his voice steady. "The Illyrians saved us once," he said. "Without them, Earth would never have broken free from its home system. They gave us the stars, and now they are calling for us. If we turn away, what does that make us?" His words struck the chamber like thunder. Counselor Marin turned to him. "Admiral, you know what this would mean. To send the fleet so far, to commit our strength to a war we may not win. Humanity has not fought at full strength for nearly a century." "Then perhaps it is time," Saren replied firmly. "Because if the Vathar devour the Illyrians, do you think they will stop there? No, they will keep moving, and eventually they will find Earth." Silence followed his words. Everyone in the room understood. This was not just about the Illyrians. This was about survival. The technicians replayed the broken message again, filling the chamber with the sound of desperation. "This is Governor Reinl of Elira Prime. We are under attack. Please, to any who hear this, help us." The plea hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Far above Earth, orbiting in the black of space, the fleets slept in their docks. Hundreds of ships, their silver hulls gleaming under the light of the sun, waited silently. They were symbols of human unity, built by colonies across dozens of worlds. But for years they had been little more than guardians of trade routes, enforcers of peace, protectors of distant borders. Never before had humanity brought all its fleets together for a single purpose. But the Illyrian plea changed everything. In the days that followed, debates raged across Earth's governments. Some argued to stay out of the war. "We cannot risk extinction for another species," they said. Others argued for immediate action. "If we do nothing, the Vathar will eventually come for us," they warned. Among the common people there was little doubt. Across the colonies of Mars, Europa, Titan, and the great floating cities of Venus, civilians watched the recordings of Illyrians begging for help. They remembered the old stories of how the Illyrians had guided Earth's first explorers through the dangers of hyperspace, teaching them to avoid the deadly rifts that had consumed so many ships. Humanity owed them. On the streets, people carried signs, "Send the fleets," "Save our allies," "Stand for humanity." And slowly, the pressure grew too strong to ignore. 1 week after the first message, the United Earth Council gathered for a final vote. The chamber was tense, filled with reporters, ambassadors, and military leaders. Outside, thousands of civilians filled the plazas, their voices rising in chants that echoed through the city. "Help them. Help them." Councillor Marin rose to speak. "We face a choice," she said, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of history. "We can turn inward, close our eyes, and hope the storm passes us by. Or we can act and show the galaxy that humanity stands by its promises. The Illyrians gave us the stars. Now they ask for our strength. I say we answer." The vote was cast. The result was clear. Humanity would answer the plea. That night, across Earth and its colonies, the order went out. Mobilize the fleets. Shipyards blazed with light as engineers worked without rest. Soldiers packed their gear and boarded transports. Pilots tested their fighters, engines screaming like thunder. On the great carrier Sol's Wrath, Admiral Saren stood on the command deck, staring at the holographic star map where Elira Prime blinked red. "We are coming," he whispered, though no one else could hear. And so the plea of a desperate ally set the wheels of history turning. For the first time in centuries, humanity prepared to unleash its full strength, not for conquest, not for greed, but for loyalty and survival. Somewhere across the stars, Elira Prime burned. But hope had been lit as well. And soon the universe would see what it meant when humanity came to war. The decision had been made. Humanity would answer the call. But deciding was the easy part. Acting on it was something else entirely. Across Earth and the colonies, the machinery of war began to wake. Orbital shipyards that had slept for years came alive with fire and noise. Great scaffolds unfolded around half-completed battleships. Welding drones raced along metal frames, and crews worked day and night without rest. On Mars, factories that once built mining haulers were retooled to build supply transports. Even the floating cities of Venus sent teams to assemble fuel depots and cargo convoys. The word spread fast. The Illyrians' desperate message played on every news channel. Children whispered about it in classrooms. Workers paused in their shifts to watch the broken signal repeat. In every heart, the same question formed: will we be enough? Admiral Saren, commander of the First Fleet, had no room for doubts. Standing on the deck of Sol's Wrath, the largest carrier humanity had ever built, he oversaw the mobilization with sharp eyes. His officers reported in quick succession. Destroyer squadrons ready for jump. Calibration. Carrier groups reporting full fighter. Complements. Logistics. Ships are requesting final fuel loads. Every word was a reminder that this was no drill. For the first time in living memory, humanity was gathering its full strength. Not just one fleet, not just a single defensive line, but everything. Yet even Saren knew numbers alone would not decide this war. The enemy, the Vathar, were not like human foes. They were countless, moving in waves that crashed against planets until nothing remained. Every scout report spoke of the same terror. Overwhelming swarms of living ships, each guided by a hive mind that never slept, never faltered, never feared. How could any fleet stand against such a tide? The answer, Saren believed, was not in numbers but in humanity itself. Strategy, creativity, and the ability to adapt, those were the weapons that had carried humans from a single world to the stars. If the Vathar expected humanity to fight like all the others they had consumed, they were in for a surprise. In New Geneva, far from the front lines, the United Earth Council worked to keep the vast effort coordinated. Councillor Marin sat at her desk, surrounded by endless streams of data. Convoys from Jupiter's moons, reinforcements from the outer colonies. A massive network of communication had to be kept running, or the fleets would never arrive together. Her assistant approached with a grim look. "Counselor, reports from the colonies of Vega 9. They want to know why we are sending so much of our strength away. They fear leaving their borders undefended," Marin sighed. "Tell them the truth. If we don't stop the Vathar at Elira Prime, there won't be any borders left to defend." The assistant nodded, though his eyes showed worry. Meanwhile, across the colonies, soldiers prepared. Young pilots climbed into simulators learning how to fight in swarm conditions. Ground troops trained for boarding actions and planetary defense, even though no one knew if they would live to see Elira Prime's surface. Among them was Lieutenant Cale Arden, a fighter pilot from Luna Base. He sat in the cockpit of his starfighter as technicians ran checks. His squadron, the Silverhawks, had been reassigned to the First Fleet. For Cale, it felt unreal. He had grown up hearing stories of the Illyrians, how their maps had guided humanity through hyperspace, how their friendship had opened the stars. Now he would fight to repay that debt. "Ready for this, Cale?" asked his wingmate Lyra over the comm. He gave a tight smile. "Doesn't matter if I'm ready. They need us. That's enough." Not everyone felt the same way. Across the colonies, voices of fear rose. Some believed sending the fleets was madness. "We are walking into the jaws of a beast," one politician declared. "This is not our war." But the common people had little patience for such arguments. On Europa, miners donated fuel reserves to the war effort. On Titan, families sent food shipments for the fleets. In the great domes of Mars, thousands gathered to cheer as troop transports lifted off into the night sky. Humanity had made its choice, and nothing would turn it back. As the preparations neared completion, scouts were sent ahead into Illyrian space. Their reports chilled even the bravest hearts. The Vathar fleet was vast, hundreds of thousands of ships moving with terrifying precision. Each one pulsed with living energy, their shapes like nightmares of bone and metal. They consumed everything in their path, tearing apart satellites, cities, even the surface of moons. Elira Prime itself was already under siege. The Illyrian defense fleet fought bravely, but they were too few. Their ships, beautiful and swift, were torn apart piece by piece. Civilians crowded into shelters, watching the skies burn as the swarm descended. Still they held out, waiting for help that might never arrive. Admiral Saren stood in the war room of Sol's Wrath, surrounded by holographic displays. He studied the reports with a calm face, though inside he felt the weight of every life at risk. "We cannot meet the Vathar in open battle," said Commodore Ashen, his second-in-command. "They will crush us with numbers." Saren nodded. "Then we will not fight them where they expect. Humanity has always won by using the unexpected. We strike fast, we strike hard, and we never give them the chance to bring their full swarm against us." He pointed to the map. "We will protect Elira Prime not by standing still, but by breaking their coordination. Find their command nodes, their hive ships. Destroy those and the swarm will falter." Ashen frowned. "If those reports are correct, their hive ships are heavily guarded. Attacking them directly would be suicide." "Perhaps," Saren said, his eyes cold. "But suicide for some may mean survival for all, and humanity has never feared sacrifice." The room fell silent. The officers knew he was right. Across the fleet's final preparations were made. Thousands of ships aligned for the jump. Crews strapped into their stations. Pilots closed their visors. Engines roared as jump drives charged, filling the void with light. On Earth, millions watched the departure live, their hearts swelling with pride and fear. In the plazas of New Geneva, people cheered as the First Fleet vanished into hyperspace, followed by wave after wave of warships. Humanity was on the move. Back on Elira Prime, the sky was fire. The Illyrians' defenses crumbled as the Vathar pressed their attack. Governor Rhinell, the same voice who had sent the desperate plea, stood in the command bunker beneath the capital city. His advisors urged him to prepare for evacuation, but he shook his head. "They are coming," he said softly. "The humans promised. They will come." Above the burning world, the swarm pressed closer. Yet far across the void, a storm unlike any seen in living memory was gathering. Humanity's fleets, united for the first time, were on their way. The Vathar had crushed countless civilizations before, but they had never faced humanity. Not truly, not at full strength, and soon they would. The stars around Elira Prime burned with the light of war. The Vathar swarm filled the system like a living storm, their ships moving in endless waves. They were countless, stretching from horizon to horizon. The Illyrian defenders fought bravely, but their fleets were too few. For every enemy ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. In the capital city below, the people huddled in shelters, listening to the thunder of explosions in the skies. Their leaders sent constant updates, but everyone knew the truth. Time was running out. And then one night the skies changed. Sensors on the edge of the system lit up with new energy signatures. Strange ripples moved across space as jump drives flared open. First came a handful of ships, then hundreds, then thousands. Their hulls shone silver in the starlight, carrying the flags of Earth and every human colony. Carriers, destroyers, battleships, troop transports, the full might of humanity had arrived. The Illyrian Defense Command was stunned. They had hoped for help, but not this. Not an entire armada. Governor Reinald's eyes filled with tears as the reports came in. They came, he whispered. The humans kept their promise. Admiral Saren stood on the command deck of Saul's Wrath, watching the swarm through a massive holographic display. His fleet now floated between Olyra Prime and the Vathar. All ships report ready, Commodore Ashen said. The swarm has detected us. They are moving to engage. The display lit up as the swarm shifted direction like a dark tide rolling toward them. Saren's voice was calm. Signal the fleet. Shields up. Fighters launch. At once the carriers came alive. Massive hangar doors opened, and squadrons of starfighters screamed into space. Their engines burned blue trails as they formed into wings, surrounding the larger ships like a cloud of steel. From his cockpit, Lieutenant Cale Arden gripped the controls. His heart raced as he listened to the comm chatter. His squadron, the Silverhawks, formed up in a V formation. Beside him, Lyra's voice crackled through. "Ready for this, Cale?" "Ready as I'll ever be," he answered, though his hands shook on the controls. Then the swarm was upon them. The first clash was chaos. Vathar ships surged forward in massive numbers, their bodies pulsing with strange green light. They spat bolts of energy that cut across space like lightning. Human destroyers opened fire, filling the void with streaks of plasma and missiles. Explosions bloomed like fire flowers against the black canvas of space. Kyle dodged hard as a swarm fighter streaked past him, its shape twisted and organic, almost insect-like. He rolled his fighter and fired, his cannons shredding it into burning fragments. Another came at him from above, but Lyra blasted it apart before it could strike. "Stay sharp, Hawks," their commander barked over comms. "These things don't fly like anything we've trained against. Watch their patterns." But there was no pattern, only chaos. The swarm attacked from every angle, overwhelming by sheer numbers. Fighters spun and dodged, human pilots fighting with every ounce of skill they had. On the larger scale, the fleets clashed like titans. Human carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. Battleships fired colossal beams that carved through enemy formations. Destroyers raced in tight packs, using coordinated maneuvers to shield each other. But the Vathar did not falter. For every one destroyed, another replaced it. Their hive-mind coordination allowed them to move like a single organism, folding around human defenses and testing every weakness. "Left flank collapsing," shouted one officer on Saul's Wrath. "Reinforce with Delta Squadron," Saren ordered without hesitation. His eyes never left the display. He knew this battle would not be won by brute force. Humanity could not match the swarm's numbers. They had to fight smarter. "Begin electronic warfare," Saren commanded. At once, specialized ships sent out powerful jamming signals. The void filled with interference as human technology reached into the swarm's mind. For a brief moment, the Vathar formations faltered. Their perfect coordination wavered and gaps opened in their lines. "Now," Saren barked. Human battleships poured fire into the openings, tearing massive holes in the enemy swarms. The void lit up with explosions as the tide momentarily turned. On the ground, Illyrian citizens watched the battle unfold from their shelters. Through windows and screens, they saw human ships standing against the endless swarm. For the first time in days, hope flickered in their hearts. One child tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Are the humans winning?" The mother held him close, her voice steady despite her own fear. "They fight for us. That is enough." But the battle was far from over. The swarm adapted quickly. They reorganized, breaking into smaller packs to avoid the jamming. New waves surged forward, hammering human defenses. One destroyer was torn apart by ramming ships, its wreckage burning as it fell toward Olyra's atmosphere. Another carrier barely survived an attack, saved only by the sacrifice of 2 escort cruisers. In the chaos, Cale's squadron was pushed to its limits. He dodged, fired, and dodged again, sweat dripping down his face. One of his squad mates was clipped by enemy fire and spun out of control, his ship exploding seconds later. Cale gritted his teeth, rage and sorrow mixing inside him. "Focus, Hawks," their commander urged. "We hold the line." And they did. For every loss, the humans gave back double. Their fighters moved with creativity the swarm could not match. rolling through enemy formations, feinting attacks, using maneuvers no hive mind could predict. Hours passed, and still the fleets clashed. The void was filled with wreckage, glowing fragments of both human ships and Vathar corpses. Neither side could claim victory, yet neither would yield. On Sol's wrath, Saren studied the battle with cold calculation. "They will not break," he muttered. "Not like this." Ashen turned to him. "Then what do we do?" Saren's gaze hardened. "We strike at their heart. The hive ships. Without them, the swarm is blind. But they are deep within the swarm," Ashen protested. "To reach them, we would have to punch through their heaviest defenses." "Then we punch," Saren replied. His voice was iron. Orders were sent. New formations began to take shape. Humanity would not fight this war like the others who had fallen. They would not be slowly consumed piece by piece. They would take the fight to the swarm's core. As the fleets regrouped for the next phase, Kale's fighter drifted beside Lyra's. Both were exhausted, but alive. He looked out at the battlefield, at the burning wreckage of ships, at the endless tide still advancing. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. Lyra's voice was steady. "Then we fight until the end." The calm crackled with new orders. Prepare for an assault deeper into the swarm. The first clash was not over. It was only the opening act of a war that would shake the stars. Humanity had survived the first storm, but greater trials lay ahead. And as the Illyrians watched from their burning world, they realized the truth. Humanity did not run, did not surrender. When called, they stood. And when they fought with everything. The swarm had met its match. The battle had raged for days. In the void around Elira Prime, the human fleet and the Vathar swarm clashed in a deadly dance. Explosions lit the darkness as starships of all sizes were shredded or sent spinning into the emptiness. Despite the chaos, humanity held the line, refusing to retreat. Yet victory came at a heavy price. On the deck of Sol's Wrath, Admiral Saren stared at the holographic display, his jaw tight. Red markers flashed across the map, each one representing a human ship destroyed or badly damaged. Entire squadrons had been wiped out in mere minutes. Even with careful planning, the Vathar's numbers seemed endless. Commodore Ashen approached, his expression grim. "We cannot lose more, Saren. If we do, the fleet will collapse." Saren shook his head. "We won't collapse. Not while humanity stands together. But yes, the cost is high. Too high. We have to protect the civilians below." On Elira Prime, the civilian population had endured horrors. Fires burned across the cities. Buildings crumbled under bombardment, and alien creatures from the Vathar swarm tore through the outskirts. Despite this, evacuation continued. Illyrian ships ferried people to orbiting transport hubs, where human cruisers awaited to take them to safety. Soldiers and pilots worked in perfect coordination with the evacuees, moving as quickly as possible. Every life saved was a victory, yet every second cost more ships and fighters in the battle above. Governor Rinell moved through the evacuation centers, calming panicked families. His voice was steady, though his hands shook. "Keep moving," he urged. "The humans are here. They will hold the line. Trust them." Children clung to their parents, eyes wide as the sky burned with energy. The adults whispered prayers, watching the silver shapes of human ships dive into the swarm above. For the Illyrians, hope had a tangible form. Fleets of humans fighting not for themselves, but for others. In space, the human pilots felt the weight of responsibility as keenly as the leaders. Lieutenant Kale Arden adjusted his controls as his fighter dodged a barrage of green energy blasts. His squadmate Lyra screamed through comms as her wingman was hit and disappeared in a flash of fire. "We can't hold them forever," she shouted, her voice tight. "We don't have to hold them forever," Kyle answered. "We just have to buy time." That's all they asked for. Humanity's strategy was clear. They could not destroy the swarm by brute force. Instead, they had to slow it down, divert it, and protect the evacuation corridors. Every sacrifice was calculated. Every ship lost allowed civilians to reach safety. And still, the losses were staggering. On the Sol's Wrath, Saren coordinated the fleet with precise, unrelenting focus. "Divert Gamma Squadron to the left flank," he ordered. "Use the interceptors to draw their attention. Shield the transports at all costs." His officers followed the commands without question, their trust in him absolute. In the chaos of war, discipline and unity became humanity's strongest weapon. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers worked together like never before, creating a force that was more than the sum of its parts. Yet the price was clear. Every decision cost lives. A communication officer approached Saren, her face pale. "Admiral, the last escort fleet. All destroyed. Only a few ships remain. They saved the transport line, but..." Saren closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. They did their duty. Humanity survives because of them. That is enough. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Illyrians watched as the humans fought in patterns no swarm could anticipate. Their ships darted through openings in the enemy lines, striking the Vathar from unexpected angles. Human destroyers fired coordinated volleys, and fighters executed precise maneuvers that seemed impossible. For the Illyrians, it was both terrifying and inspiring. They had never witnessed a species fight with such determination, such cunning, such unwavering loyalty to others. It was unlike any battle they had ever seen. Governor Reinald turned to one of his advisors. "They fight not just for victory," he said softly. "They fight for us. That is why they are dangerous. That is why they will survive." Back in space, Kyle's squadron faced one of the Vathar's most dangerous waves yet. Ships poured from the swarm like water from a broken dam. They were faster, smarter, more coordinated. Several fighters were lost in moments. Kale's hands flew over the controls as he maneuvered through the chaos. "Keep your formation," he yelled. "We protect the transports no matter what." Lyra's voice cracked. "I've lost 3 already." "I know," Cal said, his voice steady. "We all have. But we survive, we fight. That is what they are counting on." They weaved through the enemy, hitting weak points in the swarm, drawing the attackers away from the civilian ships. The price was heavy, but humanity's unity held. Every pilot, every crew member, every soldier contributed to the survival of countless lives. Hours turned into a day, then another. The Vathar adapted to human strategies, but humans adapted faster. Fleets moved in perfect synchronization, using feints, decoys, and unexpected tactics. The swarm's advantage in numbers began to diminish, yet with every victory, human ships fell. Explosions lit the void like fireworks, sending debris spinning into the darkness. Fighters that had trained for months vanished in seconds. Battleships that had carried hundreds of crew exploded in blinding light. The cost of saving Elira Prime weighed heavily on every commander. Saren stood silently, watching the holographic display. "They will see humanity's strength," he muttered. "But not without loss." Ashen placed a hand on his shoulder. "We knew the price when we came." "We knew," Saren nodded. "Yes, but knowing doesn't make it easier." Despite the devastation, the humans never wavered. Pilots risked everything to shield transports. Engineers repaired ships under fire. Soldiers boarded enemy vessels to sabotage them from within. Every act of courage inspired the others, creating a chain reaction of bravery and determination that no swarm could completely extinguish. Even in the midst of fear, humanity's resolve shone bright. The fleet moved as one, a single organism of purpose and loyalty. The civilians on Elira Prime sensed it too. As they evacuated, they saw the pattern of human ships in the sky. They saw the bravery, the determination, and the sacrifices being made for their lives. Hope grew in their hearts, stronger than the fear that had gripped them. One child whispered to his mother, "They are like heroes." The mother nodded. They are human, and when humans fight for others, nothing can stop them. By the end of the second day, the humans had slowed the Vathar advance enough to allow the majority of civilians to reach safety. The evacuation was nearly complete, but the cost had been staggering. Entire squadrons were gone. Battleships had been reduced to floating wrecks. Countless lives had been lost, yet the survivors knew it had been worth it. Admiral Saren gathered the remaining fleet leaders. "We have bought time," he said. "Time for the Illyrians, time for strategy, and time to strike at their hive ships. But we must be clear, the next phase will be even harder. The enemy will not forgive our resistance." He paused, looking at each officer in turn. "Yet we will fight. Because humanity stands together, and when we do, nothing can break us." The fleet responded with solemn agreement. Every commander, every pilot, every crew member understood. They had paid the price of unity, but they would not falter now. In the darkness above Elira Prime, the human fleet held. Ships glowed with energy, their weapons ready. The swarm loomed, still threatening, still deadly, but now facing a force they could not easily crush. Humanity had proven one thing: when called upon, they would unite, sacrifice, and fight not for themselves, but for others. The Illyrians watched from below, hope finally blooming in their hearts. They realized the truth: humanity's courage and unity were unmatched. They would not be abandoned. And as the humans prepared to strike deeper into the swarm, one thought spread among every officer, pilot, and soldier: they would not fail. The stars above Elira Prime seemed to burn brighter than ever before, not with fire, but with the light of determination. Humanity's fleets hovered in formation, battered but unbroken. The Vathar swarm still pressed toward the planet, their countless ships darkening space like a storm cloud. Yet the humans had learned their patterns, anticipated their movements, and survived waves that would have destroyed any other civilization. Admiral Saren stood on the bridge of Sol's Wrath, staring at the vast field of enemy vessels. He had studied every scout report, every battle map, every casualty log. Every loss had been heavy, but every victory had bought precious time. Now the final phase of their plan was about to begin, a direct strike at the heart of the swarm. "The hive ships," he said quietly to Commodore Ashen. "If we destroy them, the rest of the swarm will collapse. This is our chance. Humanity will show the galaxy what it means to fight for others." Ashen nodded grimly. "Then let's give them a fight they will never forget." Across the fleet, orders went out. Every ship, from the smallest fighter to the largest battleship, took position. Carrier wings lined the flanks, ready to intercept any attack. Destroyers formed a protective screen around the troop transports still evacuating civilians from Elira Prime. And at the center of the formation, the Solar Lance Fleet prepared. These massive ships carried weapons of unprecedented power, energy beams capable of cracking planets and obliterating even the largest of enemy vessels. Pilots checked their controls. Soldiers ran through their drills. Engineers monitored every system. Humanity had survived every trial so far, and now they would strike. Lieutenant Cale Arden sat in his fighter, gripping the controls. Around him, the Silverhawks formed tight formations, ready to dive into the swarm. His voice crackled over comms. "This is it. We strike at the hive ships. Stay sharp. Watch each other's backs." Beside him, Lyra nodded. "Time to show them what humans are capable of." Cale took a deep breath. For Elira Prime, for every life at stake. The first wave moved in. Human fighters darted like silver streaks through the enemy swarm, targeting the smaller vessels and creating corridors for the larger ships to advance. Missiles, energy blasts, and plasma fire tore through the enemy, but still the Vathar pushed forward. They were relentless, moving in patterns that seemed impossible to break. Yet humanity had one advantage the Vathar could never understand: creativity. Fighter squadrons split into unpredictable maneuvers, drawing enemy ships into traps. Battleships feigned retreats only to strike from angles the swarm had not anticipated. Electronic warfare units sent pulses through the hive network, causing temporary confusion in the swarm's coordination. Every move was calculated, yet improvisation remained key. Humans thought in ways the hive could not anticipate. As the fleets approached the hive ships, the true scale of the Vathar's power became clear. Towering ships almost as large as moons pulsed with strange green energy. Each hive ship coordinated hundreds of thousands of smaller vessels, sending them out like predators hunting prey. Commodore Ashen turned to Saren. "We face the heart of the swarm. One wrong move and the fleet is destroyed." Saren's eyes were cold and focused. "Then we will not make a wrong move. Humanity has never fought like this before. Now we strike." The Solar Lance Fleet charged their energy beams, each ship glowing with raw power. Battleships and destroyers advanced, firing volleys that shredded smaller enemy units. And above them, the fighter wings swarmed, protecting the larger ships and distracting the hive's defenses. Kyle's fighter dove through a storm of green energy blasts, weaving past enemy ships with precision. His guns fired continuously, cutting down attackers that threatened the corridor of the human fleet. Beside him, Lyra executed a perfect loop, destroying a Vathar frigate before spinning back into formation. The first hive ship loomed ahead, larger than anything Cale had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with an organic metallic sheen, and tendrils of energy reached out like the arms of a giant octopus. The swarm moved as one, defending their command center with everything they had. "Now," Saren commanded. The Solar Lance Fleet unleashed their energy beams simultaneously. Blue-white light tore across space, hitting the hive ship with incredible force. Explosions erupted along its surface as the beams carved deep, precise paths into its structure. Smaller Vathar vessels were obliterated instantly as collateral damage, and a shockwave rippled outward, knocking other enemy ships off course. Kale and his squadron pressed forward, diving into the gaps created by the massive beams. Fighters weaved between debris, striking at weak points and disabling the hive ship's secondary defenses. Lyra's voice came over comms, tense but exhilarated. "We're in. Keep pushing." The human fleet worked as a single organism. Battleships fired salvo after salvo. Fighters darted in and out. Destroyers launched torpedoes that struck like thunder. The hive ship shook violently under the concentrated attack. For the first time, the Vathar swarm faltered, but the hive ship fought back. It lashed out with massive energy tendrils, destroying several human ships instantly. Fighters were caught in the blast, torn apart in seconds. Debris flew in all directions, making navigation a deadly challenge. Kale dodged, fired, and dodged again, heart pounding. He saw one of his squad mates hit and spin out of control. "No, hang on, Aaron," he shouted, but the fighter was gone. "Stay focused," Lyra shouted. "We have to finish this." Every pilot knew the risks, yet none hesitated. The Vathar had met humanity, and humanity did not run. Every strike, every maneuver, every sacrifice brought them closer to victory. Finally, the combined efforts began to pay off. The hive ship shuddered violently as the solar lance beams struck in unison. Explosions erupted across its surface and cracks formed, glowing with intense green energy. Its defenses weakened and the swarm around it began to scatter. Without the hive ship's coordination, smaller Vathar vessels became disorganized, easy prey for human attacks. Saren watched, voice calm but filled with restrained satisfaction. "They're breaking. Keep the pressure on." Ashen's eyes lit with hope. "It's working. The swarm is falling apart." On the battlefield, the tide had finally turned. Human ingenuity, courage, and determination had done what raw numbers could not. The Vathar were retreating. One by one, their ships fled, leaving the broken hive ship behind. Kale looked out at the battlefield, seeing the enemy withdraw. Exhaustion and relief washed over him. We did it," he whispered. Lyra smiled through her visor. "Not yet. The hive ship still stands." With precise coordination, the remaining fleet focused all firepower on the hive ship. Energy beams, missiles, and concentrated fighter attacks tore it apart. Explosions ripped across its surface, shaking the void with their power. Finally, with a blinding flash, the hive ship disintegrated. The swarm, now leaderless, scattered into the darkness of space, directionless and vulnerable. The humans had won the battle. The Vathar would live to fight another day, perhaps, but their advance had been stopped. On Olyra Prime, people cheered as the skies cleared. Fires still burned in some cities and damage was immense, but hope had returned. Governor Rynell looked up at the silver shapes of human ships above. Tears filled his eyes. "They kept their promise," he whispered. Admiral Saren watched the battlefield calm, his fleet battered but victorious. He spoke to his officers. "Humanity has proven itself today, not through numbers, not through luck, but through unity, courage, and loyalty. We fought for others, and that is what made the difference." Commodore Ashen nodded. "We have shown them what humanity is capable of." "Not just shown," Saren replied. "We have reminded ourselves." On the surface, the Illyrians began to rebuild. Civilians emerged from shelters, helping each other and cleaning the streets. Children ran freely again, pointing to the stars where the human fleet still hovered, a shining reminder of courage and loyalty. Governor Rynell addressed the people. "The humans fought for us when we could not. They did not ask for anything in return. They acted out of honor, bravery, and compassion. Remember this and let it guide our future." Far above, Kale Arden and the Silverhawks flew in formation. The battle had taken its toll. Many of their friends and comrades were gone, but the sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. They had survived against impossible odds. They had helped save an entire world. Lyra spoke quietly. "We did it. Humanity did it." Kyle smiled, exhausted but proud. "Yes, and the galaxy will know our name." As the fleet set course to regroup, the message was clear to all who witnessed it. Humanity fights not just for itself, but for what is right. When called, humanity brings its full strength, its ingenuity, and its courage to protect those who cannot defend themselves. The plea that had once begged for help had been answered. And in doing so, humanity had shown the universe that when humans stand together, nothing, not even an endless swarm, can break them. The stars were silent again, but humanity's legend had begun.